What's happening, guys, and welcome back to another video with me, Mr. London Plumber. I'm a plumber who makes plumbing content like this to be able to help you how to diagnose or fix your problems. So we've got a toilet which keeps on overflowing into itself. So as a plumber, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, what's going on here? So we can see the overflow, which is on our right, is being filled up. So if I push the double flush to release all of the water out of the toilet, I'm able to see what's going on now. So now I want to see it filling up, because when I first saw this, I knew to myself that it's the inlet, but there's ways how to check. So I'm going to check to see if the float is going up and down, and that is the float. And no, it's not going up and down freely, which it should be. So as the water comes into the tank, it rises and it stops. That's its main purpose, right? So that's something we all need to remember. So now I'm just waiting for it to fill up again so I can make sure that it's not the siphon. So sometimes the siphon can be letting by and water can be trickling into the toilet. But if it's going over the overflow, that means that the siphon's holding it down and it's to do with the inlet. But we want to double check these things because nobody wants to buy nothing for no reason, and we don't do that as plumbers. We make sure we see if we can fix it first, and then we resort to maybe replacing it. So stick with me in this video and I'm going to show you the part you need to buy to replace the inlet. So make sure you take some note if you're looking to do this change yourself. And most important thing is to actually be able to isolate the water. But you're going to see how I had to isolate the water in this scenario. So right then you saw me zoom in, and what I zoomed in on was the 6 litres, which is on the back of the toilet pan. Right? So now you can see the marking on what level the toilet water should be inside that pan at the back. And I'm going to show you something you can do to be able to check to see if you're not getting that little drip just running through. So I'm getting some tissue and I put this tissue inside the toilet, and that way I can know when it's running off the back of that wall, because sometimes you can't see it. And that's something that I've used for many moons to be able to find out, is it still dripping? Because sometimes you just can't see it. But we're going to know when it gets to that overflow level, and your overflow level should always be higher than the 6 meter point. That way you know when your toilet's starting to overflow. So it's a safety precaution, and if it keeps on running, you can imagine it's going to run your bill up at some point, innit? So this is why we need to change these things, and this is why you're probably watching this video. But if you stick around to the middle bit, I'm actually going to show you what the inlet pipe is like and what the fitting is like as itself, so you'll be able to see it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it as well from a plumber's perspective, and why I went for this particular one instead of getting a different one. So at this point I can still see it's going over the overflow, so I know at this point it's the inlet. So that was me double checking 2 different methods. So you saw the float come up, it wasn't coming up, and then you saw now that we are having to find out where the isolation valve is behind this toilet. All toilets are put in different ways, but look, I was never going to be able to get to this, and there's not an isolation valve on it. So how am I going to do it now? Because there's nowhere to isolate it from. So I'm going to have to turn off all of the water to be able to do it. And these are things which we have to do as plumbers, and you should be prepared to do. And sometimes you should actually know where these valves turn off and on for. So we want to double check it by lifting up that valve and making sure there's no more water coming in. We want to put a bucket underneath as well. So what we're going to do is take that nut off, what you can see me just point to, and we're going to take the other white nut which is above that as well. So I'm going to actually have to go to a shop to actually get the part what I need, but I go to plumbing merchants and you'd be able to find these parts in most places. So I went to a local plumbing shop and just got this normal inlet, but it's got a thread on the bottom which is different. So underneath you can see this is a plastic thread. So this plastic thread and this nut will come off hand tight because it's plastic. It shouldn't be done up that tight. The only other nut you would need to take off is the nut underneath, which connects onto the flexi hose. So as you can see, our old thread was plastic and our new one is brass. I like to go for brass threads because you got less chance of cross threading them, and it's happened to me a few times, so I've learnt my lesson as a plumber. I go for these types of ones. You can have two different types of inlets, so you can have bottom entry and side entry. This one in particular is a bottom entry inlet. So as you can see, it looks exactly the same as the other one. Read the manual and the instructions from the manufacturers. You should always read them. I'm not going to read them because I know how to put it in, but everyone else, if you need to follow it step by step, that's what they're there for. Instructions are there to be followed. I'd always say this to people, but me doing this process, I've done it thousands of times as a plumber, so I just thought I would just talk you and walk you through it. Like I said, you only need a certain amount of tools: flat screwdriver, adjustable, and I used my Nipex water pump pliers as well, just to tighten up that little small brass nut, because as you know, that brass nut is not very thick, so I want to make sure it's done up properly because it will leak if it's not. And you want to make sure that you put the washer and then the nut. So this is why I say to you that you need to read the instructions, because they would always tell you which ones go where. So as you can see, rubber washer, the washer is inside the inlet, and then you've got this rubber washer which is on the outside, which touches the ceramic, and then you've got your brass. You wouldn't want to put your brass straight onto your ceramic and tighten it up. So at this point now, I'm having to turn the water back on. So again, as plumbers, sometimes we have to turn the water off from the main stopcock or the main valve to be able to isolate the water. But we do always want to tell our customers to be able to install them in places where they need them on their appliances. Things like this toilet could do it as well. So stick around to the end. I'm going to tell you what I do at the end of the job, which is test and try for any type of leak. So I wipe down the surface, and I'm able to rub my hand over the nut and the thread to test for any types of leaks. And I didn't get any, so I was happy with it. But stick around to the end of this video, where I've got one more little tip for you before we go, and I'll see you on the other side. Just make sure you follow this video step by step. And if you like anything what you see, or you think you want me to do an in-depth video, just let me know in the comment section. And this is just a flush, this is 1 and this is 2. So let's fill it up, let's open the valve all the way. I've checked underneath here, made sure it's bone dry, and that's how to tell if I've got any leaks. I'm just going to fill it up 2 more times to have a double check, and then that's the end. So this is the end part of the video. I would suggest for you to check it a few times, make sure there's no leaks, make sure it's operating properly, and make sure it's not overflowing as well. And that should be it. And that was how to fix an inlet valve on a toilet with Mr. London Plumber. Let's get it.